Have you ever had to infiltrate a hard target but can't figure out how to smuggle in a weapon without doing something uncomfortable? No? Not yet? Have you ever been patted down before meeting your local mob boss at an Olive Garden or Papa John's or whatever and had your gun taken from you? And wouldn't it be helpful if in that particular situation you had a 9mm that looked like an everyday object that would pass typical lazy Italian scrutiny? Yeah, none of that's ever happened to me. None of that shit's ever happened to you either. But that shouldn't stop you from buying a gun that kind of looks like a cell phone just because it's cool. I mean, you're an American, by God, and if you want a gun that looks like a cell phone or a pen or a toaster oven, that's what our founding fathers had in mind for you. If you told Benjamin Franklin you wanted a cell phone gun, he probably would have no clue what you meant, because I mean, they didn't even have the telephone, much less cell phones. But you know, after you explained it to him what a cell phone was, he'd probably be pretty amped about both the cellular telephone and the gun that looks like one. Anyways, guys, we're talking about the cell phone gun today on TFBTV. Yes, I have reviewed a cell phone gun, and yes, it was the Ideal Conceal cell phone gun. That's when the original Ideal Conceal cell phone gun came out a few years back, I think 2018. The text message version is that the original was a 380. This one's a 9mm, brand new. And in this video, I have the privilege of interviewing the president of Ideal Conceal and the inventor of the cell phone gun, and I'll show you that interview in just a moment. As I said, the original cell phone gun was in 380, and I know some of you feel like Clint Smith does on the subject of 380 versus 9. If you haven't watched this channel before, Mr. Smith, who's been on this program frequently, has eloquently stated that he would not have a 380 up his ass if he had room for a tugboat. Many of you refuse to carry the short 9, notwithstanding the fact that several loadings of 380 have managed to meet the FBI's gel penetration standards, punching through excess of 12 inches of ballistic gel with decent, about a ½ inch expansion. To put it another way, I personally don't have a problem with 380, but saying I don't have a problem with 380 in public is not much different than telling the world that you watch the TV show Friends. There's nothing wrong with it, but everyone's still going to assume that you're a schoolboy bitch. So to briefly revisit what the cell phone gun is, this is a 2-shot Derringer in 380 or 9mm that looks like a cell phone. Both models are basically the same. The 380 version's more or less overbuilt for the cartridge. They weigh the same, they have the same dimensions, same internal hammer, double action trigger pull, same deployment mechanism. Really, everything is the same except for the caliber. When closed, they look like a cell phone. A little bit like a chubby cell phone. As you can see, two-dimensionally, everything looks great, especially from a distance, even if they are a little thick. But even if it isn't a perfect copy of a cell phone, it's close enough and people see what they expect to see. They expect to see a cell phone. They don't expect to see a 2-shot Derringer that folds up into a metal box that looks like a cellular phone, because after all, that would be crazy, right? Crazy like a fox. So on that note, let me introduce you to the crazy old fox that came up with this design, Kirk, the founder of Ideal Conceal. I got a brief opportunity to interview him at the St. Bernard Indoor Shooting Center a couple months back, and here that is. What was the idea behind Ideal Conceal?
In essence, I wanted to make it easier for people to be able to carry a pistol. I saw the increase, like everybody did, in crime and terrorism and these kind of things, and I think the thing that precluded a lot of people from carrying was that they did not want to be seen with a handgun. So I wanted to make something that people could carry, be very safe, be very hard to identify as a handgun, yet a couple defensive rounds, hopefully get you out of some trouble in the event that you're in it.
How long ago did you first have this idea where you said, you know what, I'm going to make a gun that looks like a cell phone?
August of 2015 is when it started.
And when was your first production copy? When was that produced?
2018, because in the original it was just a drawing, obviously, to begin with. It took us a while to get to fruition of the actual gun.
What kind of challenges did you run into when you're deciding to design this gun?
One of the biggest things that we found was that there was nobody to copy. When you're doing something nobody's ever done before, I mean, if you're doing another version of a revolver, another version of a 9/11 style gun, you have other guns to look at to find out what you can do. In this instance, there was nothing like it, and which also provided a lot of design challenges. Actually failed quite a few times, which I think is unfortunately more common than a lot of people would like to know. We had different control groups, firing control groups that did not work, and then we went through a period of time where, because it's such a tight tolerance gun, I mean, 100 thousandths of inches can make a big difference in whether it wants to go off or not. So it took a lot of time to perfect all of those moving parts.
And you've got the kinks worked out, and it's in production, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we are in production. We have produced a couple thousand so far. One of the reasons I was excited to be here is we are going to introduce a 9mm here shortly. It was something the public has wanted, and people at shows have really asked for quite a bit. So that's going to be fun, and we also have our holster, our proprietary holster that's now coming out. We were able to get an influx of investment, which is also what we've been waiting for. Makes a big difference when you're trying to put something together.
Cash does make things easier, yeah.
Yeah.
So you started with a 380, and then you said, logically, let's go with a 9mm, but why didn't you do it the other way around? I would think 9mm would be the better way to start, huh?
It would have been, except for the fact that we didn't know if the frame could take it. We wanted to start, I originally wanted to start with a 22. And a lot of people, of course, have this idea that unless it's a cannon, it's not going to stop somebody. So we went with a 380, figuring that we get that perfected, we get the frame to be able to take it, then the next logical step would be a 9mm.
When's the 9mm going to come out?
It'll be out in June.
How much is it going to cost me?
A lot. Right now we're looking at about $800.
Okay, what's the price difference then between the 380 and the 9?
This is currently the 380 is at $550 retail, but we've obviously been, I think, a little low, and then all of the different things that have happened between people buying 20-some million guns last year have driven prices up in our industry for barrel stock and common parts. All machining's gone up, everything's gone up, so our prices are going to have to go up some too.
Sure. So is the price difference in between the 380 and the 9? Is that driven by the lack of supply, or is it driven by the fact that maybe you needed to beef it up a little bit, or is it a little bit of both?
It's a little bit of both. Everything's going to come up a little bit, but yeah, we did beef up the 9 quite a bit. In fact, this gun is particularly overbuilt, and that was part accident, part on purpose. We always wanted to make a real solid product, but we couldn't necessarily afford to buy all the molds and try and do things more inexpensively. So we carve everything out of metal. I mean, it's blocks of aluminum, blocks of steel, no poured parts. There's no foreign parts. Everything's USA made. So we're real proud of that as well. So the other neat thing about this pistol and what we're doing now with our proprietary holster is the ability to open carry. A lot of states in the United States will allow you to open carry a pistol as long as it's not in any way concealed. So when you have it on your belt, it looks very, very much obviously like a cell phone, but it also allows you to carry a pistol in public without necessarily having to have a concealed carry permit. Now, local laws and state laws always apply, so check your local laws. But the nice thing about it is if you want to carry a gun, but you don't necessarily want to have to go through all of the permitting, you'll be able to do that with this pistol.
Speaking of laws, you all have been specifically targeted, and that is Ideal Conceal. You've been specifically targeted by laws in some states.
Yes. Yeah, the state of Illinois was happy to decide that any gun that looks like a wireless device is illegal in the state, class 4 felony to possess one. Even though they have some of the worst gun crime in the country, they felt a little 2-barrel Derringer defensive weapon was just too much, so they passed a law against it there specifically. And of course, California and other states that are anti-gun, specifically, you have to get on their rosters and that kind of thing. We haven't done that. I guess we're going to the more normal states first, and then we'll worry about those guys later.
With Illinois, do you feel like that was specifically targeted towards you and your company?
Oh, it absolutely was. Yeah, absolutely. As soon as this came out, of course, it drew a lot of negative attention, which a lot of firearms do, but people were under the mistaken impression that it was somehow invisible, or you could walk on a plane with it, or you go through a metal detector with it, none of which is true. It's made of steel, it has gun components in it, it's very much a pistol. But I think they're just so revved up about getting gun control done that they pick on anything that's different, and we were different, and it was an opportunity for them to get an easy win against guns. And I think it's really kind of crazy, especially given the amount of gun deaths and shootings and crime that they have in that state, to preclude people from carrying something that is a purely defensive weapon. I mean, you have 2 shots. it's not something that people are going to want to take to a gunfight with a cop.
Can I shoot plus P through the 9mm version?
The manual says no, because I have attorneys. I've shot a lot of different rounds through it, and it is overbuilt. But I have to say no in the event that it would not match up to the
You're talking to the right guy.
manual.
You're talking to the right guy.
We gotta go cover the legal channels, but people have done that even with the 380. I know
You
that.
advise against it, but it's been done.
I advise against it, but people have done it. Yeah.
Last question, where do you see this going? Like, what is there going to be a third iteration? You go 389 and then maybe a new caliber, or are you just going to keep working on what you have? Let's say you continue to have success. Where's this going next?
Well, the 22 caliber is next, and the reason for that is we want something that has an easier trigger pull. This does have a long trigger pull. It is a double action, so you are literally cocking the pistol as you pull the trigger, which is safe. Obviously, for people, I've said to people, you're not going to shoot anybody by accident. It doesn't have a hair trigger. You literally have to pull it a long way and pull it quite hard. So one of the things we're trying to do is make one that's more friendly, especially for college age gals. I've had so many people call, I want one for my daughter, I want one for my wife. And unfortunately, a lot of people, even men included, have a hard time pulling the trigger. So one of the things we're trying to do by going to 22 is lighten up the trigger pull, make it easier for people to handle it. And then I think, there is a semi-automatic on the works, but that'll be a ways out, and we're also looking to eventually go to 410, 45.
So you got a lot of plans in. This is already, it sounds like you have a lot in the works.
Yes. Yeah.
Kirk, thanks a ton for being with us. Best of luck with you. It sounds like, again, you guys are going places. I'm excited for you. Thanks for being on TFBTV.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you kindly.
All right, now that we've gotten through the background, let's briefly review the gun. If you want something more in depth, go back to my video from 2018. I'll drop a card here. Bear in mind, a lot of unconventional design choices had to be made in order to make this thing both work and look like a cell phone. Accordingly, it's unfair to compare this gun apples to other handguns or even other Derringers. A Derringer looks like a Derringer. The Ideal Conceal looks like a cell phone. So you have to kind of look past the fact that these guns are really unpleasant to shoot. At least the 9mm version is.
Mother bitch! Dude,
Are you about to quit?
Yeah, I'm about to quit. That's that, dude.
Woo, a 10-step. God, not gonna lie. Does bite just a little bit. Okay, let me address Brandon's valid reaction here. First, the 380 is not bad to shoot. Brandon shot the 9, and I also was shocked at the recoil difference between the 9 and the 380. They're not even in the same class for felt recoil. But you have to remember, the grip is basically a piece of folded sheet metal that's hollow with no gripping surface, only hard edges. While that sounds great for a prison shank, it's not ideal for a pistol. The grip, as you guys see here, is just like a little bit of thin gauge steel, right? So it's not exactly the most comfortable thing. The angle is flat, but you're changing the fundamental design of the gun. You want it to be flat, hello. As people with college degrees might call it, unergonomic. That said, again, this is the cell phone gun, and frankly, I'm not sure what you could do with this grip to make it any other way and convincingly cellphonic, if that's a word. If you shoot the 380, you'd think to yourself, that wasn't bad, but it wasn't really fun either. A bit like watching a Hickok 45 video. But shooting the 9mm, on the other hand, feels like grabbing a powered up horse fence. Ask me how I know. The 9mm cell gun is like a weird old-timey Pavlovian psychiatrist device that, like, if you shoot it enough times, you're going to subconsciously associate firing a gun with pain. Well, I've got news for you. If years of throbbing headaches and nausea haven't been able to get me to quit box wine, I'm not going to set down a gun just because of a little felt recoil. But if you're getting this as a range toy or a novelty, I'm telling you to get the 380 because it is actually a little fun. Notwithstanding the heavy trigger, this gun can shoot pretty decently at short distances. So kind of between the minimalist sights, the recoil, kind of a heavier than normal trigger, which I'm not holding against the gun because, it's made to look like a cell phone. And I think all of those are necessary design features for it to maintain that aesthetic and that purpose. But the point is, I'm not sure I would be trying any, let's say, long distance calling with this thing. So I've got a target set up, and by a target I mean a 1-inch square piece of tape here at 10 feet. I'm gonna shoot at it, and we're gonna kind of see what happens. Okay, so here's my observation. Actually decently accurate, right? And you can see, like this one I pushed because I was being a bitch, and then these two I threw because I was being a bitch again. But what's funny is when you look at, you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 right here, and then you've got 1, 2, 3 right there, and look at that. So it's oriented, you've got one barrel on top of the other. So it's funny because I was like, man, it really seems like the first one I shoot goes high and the second one goes low. No, they're going exactly where they're supposed to go. You just have a little bit of offset because you're firing from the top barrel and then the bottom barrel. So I think that that's kind of a funny thing that you don't think about, and then after it happens a second or third time, you're like, why am I shooting the first one like half an inch high? Oh, well, there you go, dumbass. So, makes sense. And you guys can see, I think I just got zapped a little bit. Like you've got, there's your, like the equivalent of cylinder gap right there. And I've been hit a couple times with it, but that's the first time I really felt it. So I'd kind of maybe watch your thumb. But once again, this is like a last ditch gun. You know, so this thing is a bit of a compromise that you're getting concealment in return for, we'll call it less than optimal shooting performance. So I could still pair two shots together pretty closely, albeit with aimed shots and a slow press of the trigger to keep things even. This gun might not be as accurate under pressure, but on the other hand, we know what Derringers are for, and that's bad breath distance. At that range, gun will do just fine. Twice. And on that note, you're not getting a reload, again, because this gun needs to be streamlined. The manual extractor is also super low profile. You're literally pressing the extractor into the spent case rims and pulling them out by pressing the extractor button away from the chambers. It's not very sophisticated, but again, it's probably a necessary element of the design. So that means you're going to get off two shots. Accordingly, I'm comfortable saying that if you're truly carrying this gun for self-defense because you want a gun that might not raise any eyebrows, then go with a 9mm. It's just as accurate as the 380, same size, same weight, same everything, but you get more power. And when you, as a TFBTV viewer who's undoubtedly a very handsome male and you're being accosted in a dark alley yet again by someone who wants something from you that isn't money, you probably aren't even going to notice the sharper recoil from the 9 while your adrenaline's pumping anyways. So who's the Ideal Conceal for? James Bond, obviously. Or maybe someone who wants to carry a gun unconcealed in a place they don't want people to know that they have a gun, although that's a really weird and narrow subset of carriers, I guess. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that most buyers are going to buy this gun just because it's freaking cool. It just so happens that it's a functional firearm as well, not just a toy for the kids to mess with when you need something to distract them. And hell, it's not even that fun to shoot. So I'm not saying that the cell phone gun is revolutionizing the concealed carry game or anything here, but it's pretty damn neat. And it's a novelty that has some niche practical applications. Hold on a second. Anyone hear that? My gun's ringing. I gotta go. Thanks to Ideal Conceal for sending this gun for me to review. Thank you to Ventura Munitions for sending the ammo. And thanks as usual to Top Gun Supply for being a sponsor of the channel and your online shooting sports superstore. On top of that, Top Gun Supply donates 4 guns a month that we give away, and I announce the winners on Mailroom every single month. If you are in the $5 or the $10 level of Subscribe Star, who's a little bit more pro-gun than Patreon, or Patreon, you are automatically entered to win one of 4 guns every single month. Not to mention, you're supporting TFBTV. But you're also supporting us just by subscribing, just by watching, and I thank you for that. Take care.